I'm not much of a storyteller, so I'm sitting outside with a cigarette and recording a script I wrote. It's foggy in Boone, a little rainy, so I hope you can't hear that in the background, but it's a little wet. I'll start from the top. I've never left the country. I've never left the South, um, but I always wanted to go to Africa, and in this capacity especially. So I was a little nervous, but I feel like I adapted pretty quickly. I got along with most of the students, despite there being only females on the trip, aside from our Professor Dieter. But I think I did okay with that. Um, when we visited the boys' home, Les Enfants de Dieu, you can see Willie on the far right. He grew up there. He was our guide in Kigali, so we spent a lot of time with him. He brought us to Les Enfants de Dieu, and I wasn't scared of being around children. Some people are, because I have 7 younger siblings myself. And we had a lot of fun there. We learned a lot. They have a good system for taking care of the children there and educating them and getting them involved in community service and leadership. So it was really nice, and it was also really nice when I started a gigantic game of Ring Around the Rosie. So I think everybody had fun then. Here's our professors, Dieter and Netzine, and they were really great. They were very helpful in as far as the research goes and general life advice and things like that. But you can see that they work well together and they're really good people. They help Anate, one of our students. She's a Rwandan student. She joined us as an assistant. Um, they help Anate get to where she is, and they try and find work for Willie and things like that. They're I don't know, just generally wonderful people. Kigali was pretty crazy though. I mean, the traffic was insane. It was the most safe chaos you'll ever see. There's no rules. It's the Wild West there. But we had a lot of fun. Um, we eventually made our way to the Genocide Memorial though. Um, the Genocide Memorial kind of weighed heavy on all of us, but our companions Willie and Anate had some of their own personal connections to the atrocities. And this would kind of return near the end of our trip. Um, when we visited the gravesite of Diane Fossey near Karasoke Research Center. So the Genocide Memorial was lined with uh, photographs and information about the situation. The cultural context, the political atmosphere leading up to it, the propaganda that was involved, and a little bit of the aftermath. But they also had rooms of mementos, Polaroid pictures of people who had been swallowed up by the genocide. This kind of connects in a small way to a theme of this trip that I carried from nearly the beginning. Kind of formed it around the time we went to the Genocide Memorial. Hard to say in one sentence. A little easier in one word. Staggering. Staggering's pretty good. That word kind of came to encompass the whole country for me. It was my disposition when standing in the halls of the Genocide Memorial, surrounded by the pictures of the departed. Um, Came to represent my experience camping in Akagera National Park. Our various interactions with the wildlife. Uh, It was present in the crazy, hectic, crowded, confusing, distracting open air markets we visited in Kigali. We went to go buy cloth. People grabbing us at every turn to take pictures and ask us questions and take pictures of us and have pictures taken of them. But we had a good time there, and there's another instance of me going into it nervous and coming out fine. We took the road to Akagera. Um, Seeing and even grooming the vervet monkey Jess was a good private experience for me, because Jess did not fit in well with the other vervet monkeys, especially after coming back with this arm amputated, and she spent some time with the baboons, but they didn't really like her either. So you could tell that she was desperate for some kind of social interaction, and she came to me, and I groomed her, and she looked up at me, the big golden eyes, and then she went on to everybody else to get attention from them. But it was a lot of fun. I kind of felt like Elliot in the movie E.T. He came to me, he came to me. But it was a really nice, touching moment and connection with another primate, another social primate, and one that really needed it. And this idea of staggering relationship between us and wildlife continued in Akagera. We saw some crown cranes. I mean, they're the symbol of Uganda, but we saw them in Rwanda. Saw some crown cranes, and unfortunately, one of them got hit by a car and broke his leg. So we all gathered around and came up with ideas to properly splint it. We ended up tearing up pieces of PVC pipe and taping it, and then putting some anesthetic on it, not anesthetic, antibiotic on it. Wrapped him up, and the last we heard from this crane, he was doing okay, which is always good to hear. And then when we visited a group of baboons to do observations of them in Akagera by this game lodge, they have a trash heap out back, and there's a electrical transformer power station nearby, and all of these baboons are pretty horribly wounded and maimed by this. But there's a lot of juveniles and infants, so the benefits of living at the trash heap for food is worth the cost of being there. But we got to see, one of the outcomes of human and wildlife interaction in these baboons. This baboon in particular had a wire snare around his arm from poachers. So we spent an hour and a half maybe tracking him through the scorched earth savannah to find him and try to try to get him some veterinary help. And there was a kind of constant reminder of this throughout the entire time we were camping in Akagera, because we had this baboon named Wilbur who would come into our camp and steal potatoes from us. The countryside surrounding Yungwe was covered in a patchwork of farms and tea plantations. And Rwanda is known as the land of 1,000 hills, and it shows in the views that you get when you travel from place to place between Akagera and Nyungwe and Volcanoes National Park. The whole country is covered in these rolling hills that go off in all directions. This was a feature where we were staying, where we were sleeping every night, outside of Nyungwe Forest at Katabi Research Center. The views that we had they were just great. We went to a canopy walk inside the forest, and Kayla and I were the first brave adventurers in crossing the walkway. I think it was 70 meters high above the forest canopy, above the ceiling. Here's a photo of Dieter and Netzine and Anate and Caitlin, our two assistants and two professors, um, posing for the camera. I think Dieter looks a little goofy. He's kind of throwing me off. And we got the chance to see black and white colobus monkeys, our boreal primate. Our hike to observe them was pretty intense, but it was really a rewarding chance to see them. Uh, we even had the opportunity to uh, see them jumping from tree to tree, including mothers laden with infants. You can just barely make out a little white baby clutching to their mother's stomach as they jump across to another tree. When we went to go see the chimpanzees, we got to see their problem solving, food processing, cognition. Um, what they do is they eat figs. You can see this one here climbing up a tree to eat figs. And they chew them up because they don't like the seeds in the middle, but they like the juicy flesh on the outside. So they chew them up. It's called wodging. They have them, you can see them in their lips, and they chew it up until all the juices are drained down their throat, and then they can discard the parts of the plant that they don't like, which was a really good experience, interesting for our research in particular. My team was doing cognitive ecology, so we were looking at food processing. So the chimpanzees especially were interesting to watch. When we got to Volcanoes National Park near Musanze, we were welcomed by national Ntore dancers. Here's Caitlin drumming with them. And that kind of shows, I liked it a lot because it kind of shows the reverence the country of Rwanda has for conservation and for its mountain gorillas. They're very proud of them. There's a mountain gorilla named Titus on the 5,000 franc bill. And a lot of that has to do with Diane Fossey, the researcher Diane Fossey. On the hike to her gravesite, we were lucky enough to, even though that hike you don't need a research permit for, you just need a tourist permit, we were lucky enough to see gorillas on the trail up there, and feeding no less, which was good. At Karasoki, we visited her gravesite. She's buried alongside her beloved mountain gorillas, and that kind of gave us a few moments of silent reflection on the act of dying for a noble cause, for something that is actually worthwhile. And that was something that I think everybody in our group that hiked up there, that's something that we really enjoyed, that we took um, a lot of interest in because of our dedication and interest to primatology, especially. Anate dancing on the bridge. Um, we had a 4.5 hour hike through the Virungas, which ended in this open meadow, led by the silverback Muzili Kali. You can see him staring at me from the end of the field the entire time we were there. The group kind of tolerated our presence. But at Bwinge's group, was reminded kind of the fragile biological situation that these gorillas are in because they're a small number. There's been a great deal of genetic inbreeding going on. And we can see that in this photograph, the presence of the genetic condition syndactyly, the fusion of digits together. So by the end of the trip, I was reflecting on this word staggering and what staggering means. And throughout the entire trip, we've been confronted with and we've seen, you know, the survivors of the genocide and the descendants of the survivors of the genocide and how it's still hurting them, how it's still so present in just their day to day interactions with people. Even keeping with the theme of our primate studies field school, even seeing the other primates like Jess suffering from losing an arm and she keeps going. Um, and, you know, visiting Diane Fossey's grave after she had died defending what she thought was worthwhile and worth pursuing and keeping alive. So all this misery that we've seen, street children and les enfants de Dieu and all this destruction is staggering. But at the same time, all the resilience we've seen from Anate, who comes from this poverty-stricken country and is a student with an American university studying primates in her home country, in a country where the people are proud of their primates. Jess has survived. Diane Fossey is a national hero. So there's some good things that are staggering too. And this shot was taken on my last day of research, which I feel was my last day in the country, if only because I was so excited to do research after wanting that experience for so long. So we had just crossed over the Buffalo Wall, and we were taking a short break before walking down through the farms to get to where the vehicle was parked waiting for us. And that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking of having felt staggered, feeling the staggering weight of all the things in Rwanda that were around me.